Warning. This podcast is about to open the sealed section of spirituality. Hey you, yeah you, we see you, you divine human being.
And we are calling you to come home.
We are ready to talk about the real shit. We're going to get real about life as a divine human being.
The good, the not so great, spirituality and taboo. Divinely Human is the podcast that's all about what it means to be human in a spiritual context.
We know it's not just about being spiritual, it's about being human too.
And that means changing poopy nappies and channeling angels.
Sometimes even at the same time. It's time for us to stop making other people's noise our own soundtrack of life.
Let's make some waves together so that we can all ride them together and create deep resonance, a sense of home in this crazy world.
Pour yourself a coffee
or a glass of wine if that's your potion,
and sit down with your new favorite spiritual sisters
as we go on a journey together into what it means to be
a divine human being
on this spiritual journey. Welcome back, guys, to another week, another episode of the Divinely Human podcast. You are here with one of your co-hosts, Aleisha and
Anita.
And I've just had a little bit of a moment with the setup today. So if I were to show you what my office looks like right now, you would probably die. So I won't be doing that. But what we will be doing today is diving into a topic that was actually put forward by a community member. And as soon as we both read it, it was immediately, yes, we need to talk about this because we both have experienced this same thing. And I don't know about you, Tanina, but I'm still experiencing it in some aspects of my life to do with our businesses. And that is how to keep yourself aligned, how to keep yourself just like feeling okay pretty much when your partner or your family or just anyone in your life that is important really thinks that having a spiritual business is not a serious thing, or they don't take you seriously, or they just kind of don't really understand it. And you often feel like it's very much put on the back burner and not of importance in anyone else's life. And you're out here hustling like a motherfucker and you're like all this hard work and everyone thinks that I'm just like sit at home on the lounge all day. So as you can tell by this, I have experienced this quite a lot in my life and I'm sure that you have as well. So I am ready to hear about it all and I'm ready to unpack it so that we can help people kind of navigate through this because it can be so disheartening at times. And really, I know with me, I'm like, fuck, like, am I always going to be made to feel this way? Am I always going to be like that person with the side hustle and not be seen as an equal with my business as opposed to other business owners that have more mainstream core values and I guess mainstream foundations that it's built upon. So I'm handing it over to you now. And I just love to get your clarity on this as well and your experiences.
I fucking love this topic just to begin because it's such a prevalent conversation in terms of like looking down on women in business in particular, and especially women who run a spiritual business and then on top of that an online spiritual business. I mean, it is totally off mainstream business and it's a conversation that does float around a lot and it really does suck. I mean, for millennia, women in business have been told, oh, how's your little business going, or how's your little side project, or you know, are you earning a little bit of money now? And it's like, fuck, it fucking sucks. But I do hold multiple perspectives on this. I think when you start to step outside of that spiritual closet and you really start to open yourself up to this spiritual world and start to identify as a spiritual person, I think that it's really common that the universe will bring people into your world who will want to really test the foundation that you're building, right? And so people will come into your life and they'll say, oh, you know, like, what are you doing with that woo-woo stuff? Or isn't that just like not real? Or, and they'll throw all of these other kind of perspectives out there. And for me, I think it's just a really good time to test your foundation, test your faith with yourself. But it's really, really tough. It just is. And I've noticed so many people who own spiritual businesses want to mimic specific business roadmaps or success blueprints or offers that align more with mainstream because they think it's going to be popular and they think it's going to please many people. And it sucks because the reason why we're building spiritual business the way that we are is to actually transform the way that business has been done. We're trying to bring in more of this feminine energy, more of this conscious awareness, more of an ethical way to sell and transact with people. And it's hard and it's tough, but you have to have some sort of grit in there. And this is coming from me. I totally get that sometimes that strength is nowhere to be found and you kind of just have to push through. I don't know. What do you reckon?
You know, as you were just speaking about that just then, what came to my mind was if there was some kind of office like that was available to go and run your spiritual business from, like you were physically leaving your house and you were packing up all your stuff and then taking it all to an office where there was like space for like all people to work together, like a big team, and you were still doing your spiritual work, but it was in another location and it was seen as like an office building or like just a place, like your workplace.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there would be more respect and more admiration in some fucked up way because it was not ran from home, because you were actually going somewhere to do your work, because as you were saying, it is more aligned with that mainstream blueprint of what we idolize work to look like and what we place value on work as looking like in, you know, this day and age. And I think that there's an aspect about that is so fucked up, and it should not be the case. It's like there is no admiration, there's no appreciation for women in general. I'm speaking on behalf of women right now, but I'm sure there are some men out there that really truly feel this as well, because obviously this space is not just for women. I know so many incredible male practitioners and just spiritual businesses in general that are run by males, but I think that there's this thing, especially with women, that's like if you're at home, like you're doing duties, you are carrying out duties for the family, you are the carer of the children, and you shouldn't have time to do that. You shouldn't have time to bring through money or abundance for the family because that's your job. Your job is to be the homemaker. And as much as we feel like we have progressed past that point, we're still very much in that way of being at the moment. And as much as we like to think that, like, oh, that's not the case, I'm sure that everyone listening to this episode today, if you were to think about your dynamic in your own home, if you're a spiritual business owner, or you're somebody who is truly trying to make it happen and work from home in whatever industry or niche that is, you have had a moment in the dynamic of your relationships where you have kind of come to that head of friction and you're like, oh, wow, there's a bit of double standards going on here. And there's a lot of expectations placed on me right now. And there's not enough emphasis on the importance of my dreams and my goals and what I want to build. And you kind of are left feeling very deflated and defeated and not really placed in, importance on that rung of the ladder where we kind of look at who's contributing in a financial way, who's bringing abundance into the family in that way. I think that it's really important that we are seen as that in an equal sense as well. I think times are changing, and while it is a lot to run a full-time business and also look after kids, like my responsibilities haven't changed since starting up a business and working from home, and especially running an online business. Like I still have to go drop my kids at school in the morning. Like my partner he obviously gets up a lot earlier than me and just leaves straight for work, comes home, does whatever, but I'm still expected to fulfill those responsibilities. It's like I still have to be the mom, but I also am choosing to go down this avenue of building something for myself and committing to that and being, I guess, putting emphasis on the identity that isn't just, a mum or just a homemaker. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. There's no less value or worth if that is what you want to be doing. because I guess the foundations here and what I'm trying to get across is that whatever's most important to you, what your values are, what your dreams and goals are, that's what's most important. Don't give a fuck what that is, what that looks like. As long as it feels good in here, that's my only wish for everyone listening to this and also myself. And there just needs to be a little bit more understanding about this whole topic, I think, in general. And not just that, but also the conversations that are had outside of work when you're running this business and, you're at family events or you're in a social setting. A lot of the time there can be quite a lot of, I don't know, like it's obviously not intentional, but there's just no importance placed upon it. Like nobody asks me how work's going. It's like the unspoken about thing. It's like everybody, I genuinely feel like, not so much with my family, but like my other side of the family, an extended family in that way. Like nobody, I think maybe two people have asked me how work is, but it's always like, how's your hobby going?
Yeah.
How's the side gig? How's it
How's that
going?
thing you're doing?
Yeah, like what's that thing you're doing? Like, how's that going for you? And it's like, well, I'm actually running it full time and bringing through, quite a great income and contributing to my family with this as well. Like,
Yeah. It's going great. It's
sorry,
going great.
I will hand the mic over now. Your face
No.
and you were like,
No, I'm laughing because for me, it's switched around, other than like maybe two of my immediate family members. And that's it that really asked me about how my business is going. But my partner's family asks majority of the time. So I think it's funny. It's like literally switched around. But I agree. And it's like, you know what? I think if we're talking about this family dynamic, because I mean, most often than not, the judgment can sometimes come from your partner, especially if you met your partner and you weren't as spiritually open. And then throughout your relationship, you had that spiritual awakening and you deepened into that. It can be hard for your partner to kind of see you go through this transformation. And then all of a sudden you want to launch this business. They're probably like, what is happening? I don't understand. So it is
this
really
person.
common. Literally. But like I've experienced this. I know so many of my community members have experienced this too. And it's so, so common. I think what the struggle can be too is what value looks like in terms of contribution to the household. So whether it's financial contribution or time or nurturing, looking after the kids, being that primary caregiver, whatever it looks like. And sometimes when those are out of alignment between the two people who are living in the household together, it can throw things out of whack. And I've definitely experienced this. It's like sometimes I'm expected to be all of the things and more. And I find it sometimes really unfair that, my lovely fiance just gets to pack up, go to work, come home, go to the gym, do all this stuff. And I'm like, bruh, I'm like looking after a kid, building a business. And unfortunately, it's because I don't communicate what I'm doing every single minute of the day. And I don't have to do that, but it should be also, I believe, my responsibility to communicate effectively what it is I'm doing and how much of an importance that has on my life. I value impact and creating a substantial business that leads through my purpose and my mission and connecting with people on a genuine level over that financial gain. And I have to communicate that better. It's not his fault. He's like, this is how it is. And that's totally fucking fine. But if I want something different, I have to communicate that a little bit better, I think. And that's because it is so common for that particular partnership to be, rolled out. So I just think it's really funny. And the only reason I was laughing is because truly I see it so fucking often. We go to community events or family gatherings or meetups with friends, and people either don't ask you about your business, or when they do ask, we fucking play it down. We're like, oh, it's going well, and we don't lead any more information on. And I think for me, that comes from safety. That comes from like, oh, I cannot be bothered like telling them my whole life story right now. Maybe they just won't get it. And that's something that like I feel like we need to work on as a community. Don't you think?
Oh my goodness, yes. And as you're saying that, what's coming through is the importance of validating yourself in your role and
Yes.
placing importance on your own self-worth within who you're showing up to be in your business. Because it literally happened the other day, like, and I was speaking to you about this, they're like, oh, what are you? What do you do? And I'm like, and then they're like, are you like a vibe reader? It's like, it's so hard to put a label on it, right? Like,
Yes.
like what the fuck do I say? Like, I'm like, and then I ended up saying like, oh, I'm an astrologer, and I am. And then I stumbled. Like I was like,
Yeah.
fuck,
What are they going to think
what am I
about
gonna
this
do?
next
What
thing?
am I gonna do? And I'm like, oh, I'm like a holistic coach. And that's what I said. And then afterwards, immediately, I'm just cringing and curling up inside. And then we walked away. And I actually brought it up with my partner. And I said, it's so strange when people ask me that, because a lot of the time I feel that about saying like what I do and who I am, because obviously it's not something you can say like, oh, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a PT, I work in hospitality, I'm a chef, I work at a daycare. Like, it's like
Yeah.
there's so many hats that we wear when we run our own businesses, and especially within this niche in this industry, that it makes it difficult. And I was kind of laughing to him about it, because I said, like, imagine if I actually just turned around and said exactly what I do. Like, I'm an astrologer, I'm an Akashic Record Reader. Like, I help people to strive to be their most empowered self through the exploration of their soul. And I'm
Yeah.
like, people would literally just look at me like, but
Well,
then
I
I
think
thought,
there's no
like,
condensing it either,
yeah, yeah,
like there's no like elevator pitch for spiritual entrepreneurs. It's like you literally would have to sit there for like 2 to 3 minutes and then hear me like explain what I'm doing
yes,
and then process
yes.
that, right?
Yeah. And like, I think what stops me from just laying it all out and saying, here's what I do, this, that, is that I try to take responsibility for how they're going to integrate that and understand it. And then
Hmm.
as I was walking away the other day, like after I'd brought it up with my partner, I was just thinking to myself, you know what? It's not my responsibility to make them understand that. Like, if they're looking at me very confused, then maybe that's their problem. It's like, they, like if they want to understand it, like maybe like it's not
They
my
can ask more
job. Like
questions
they can
or
ask more questions about it. Absolutely. And then it opens a doorway for them to also explore that if they haven't been exposed to it before. And then maybe they might actually go away and dive like further into it and explore a part of like their selves that they haven't met before through being exposed to that. And I think that for me personally, I speak on behalf of myself, I really do try to take on the responsibility of other people's understanding of what I do. And I need to let that go and just
Mm.
open up that throat center and just share and just let them deal with it. And yeah, that's just a big realization I had on the weekend.
I love this realization. I think the fear also comes from like, what if they don't open the door? And then my mind
Mm,
has all of this space to wonder, well, like, what do they really think? And like, do they
mm,
even really care? Do they think I'm legit? I think the
yeah,
struggle for me is like, I want to be seen as legit. I think there are so many crappy spiritual entrepreneurs out there. There's so many tricksters out there that,
mhm,
take people's money and they don't actually put in the work, whether it's energetic or psychic or whatever they're paying the service for. And I don't want to be with those people. I don't want to be lumped in
yeah,
with that,
yeah,
And that
yeah.
really just sucks. But it is up to us to also shift that narrative. And it's a hard thing to do. It just is.
Mm, I think for me personally, like I have a long way to go with this quite clearly. And I thought that I was kind of over this. I thought that I'd mastered this, but the weekend really showed me that I hadn't mastered this and that there was still quite obviously something there that was pulling me back. I do think that it is so directly linked with like the witch wound as well. We have that so deeply embedded within us that if we tell people what we're really doing, we're going to be judged, we're going to be killed. Like we're in danger of doing that. So I think we come into this life and all of a sudden we're allowed to do it. But there's still so much fear, that like this repressed fear that we are holding on to subconsciously, that when the time comes to share and speak about it and, you know, explore with other people what this is all about, we recoil and we become, back into that old self that, during those past incarnations where we weren't allowed to speak about it so openly. And it's such a huge thing to work through. And I think that it's more common than what people share about. Like, I feel like nearly everyone listening to this would feel it to some degree in this way. And it goes beyond spirituality. It's any small business, I see so many amazing people who have stepped into their own business, whatever that is. Like, I don't care. Like, it's that fear of doing things your way and not just going with the grain, or going and doing something that doesn't fulfill you. It's the boldness in stepping into leading your life in the way that fulfills you, rather than operating from that survival mode and, oh, I have to do this so that I can afford this, instead of saying, okay, well, I'm going to turn my passion into my job and create abundance through that way. It's that way of thinking has been exiled in the past, and it's now becoming so readily available to us to utilize, but we're still fearful of that. We're still fearful of the judgment, of the dismissal, of the rejection that comes from that. And we're all trying to work through it still. And I hope that we can. And I think that the bottom line when it comes to working with this and pushing through this fear of sharing, and not just that, but just like the confidence in a social setting, or when you're visiting family or you're out and about and you're speaking about what you're doing, it's all roots into your own self-worth and your own validation of how important it is, what you're doing. And yeah, I just think that it's really, really important to continue to challenge yourself in those situations, to speak up and to share exactly what you're doing, and not worry so much about how it sounds or how like all over the place you sound, because you cannot label this. There's no way to do that. So yeah, I think it's really important.
Yeah, you know what I think we should do? I think we should have a little session where we all come together and we work on our elevator pitch and just get really comfortable talking about what we do and expressing, the things that we offer in our business and the role we kind of business to. I think it is really important for us to practice that over and over again. And I think the new challenge comes when you're meeting somebody in person, then you have to kind of go through that whole situation where you explain yourself in person. There's a whole heap of distractions around you. But I totally agree. I think it really does stem from that witch wound and that herd mentality that we have in terms of like needing to fit in with the people around us and to not stand out and not be objectified or viewed as an outsider from our peers and from the community around us. That is actually a survival, it's a survival mechanism built within us, right? And so when that happens, it's not that you are waning from your authenticity or you're not being true to who you are. It's literally your nervous system taking over your body and saying, please fit in right now. We don't know whether you will survive the next 2 seconds. And your brain doesn't know any better. It doesn't know that that person isn't carrying, a bow and arrow and is going to shoot you for like not being a part of their community, right? Like it doesn't work like that. It takes a really long time for the cells in our body over generations to recognize that we're not in a situation the same as we were thousands of years ago. So it is this repetitive thing that we're going to need to teach our nervous systems that it's safe to be seen, it's safe to show up, it's safe to communicate what I do, it's safe to express who I am. And that's why that deep shadow work and the work on our throat chakra and sitting in a community of like-minded individuals is so, so important. And that's why we preach community here at DH, because it is so necessary for you to recognize that you're not alone, and that even though people in your immediate situation, your family members, your partner, your friends, whoever, might not be on that same level as you are in terms of like your values and what you believe, but there are people out there who hold similar perspectives of what life is really about and hold those same values. And I think that's just really important to surround yourself with people like that. And also, I remember I went and saw a psychic a couple of years ago, and at the time I was just about to launch my business, and I was explaining to her, I'm like, why doesn't my partner, like, why aren't we just clicking like the same spiritually? I had this idea in my head that I would always like, if when I entered the spiritual space, I was like, I'm going to find this like really spiritual partner, and we're going to just vibe the same all the time, and we're going to like have tantric sex 24/7, and like you won't even know what I'm saying, he just like knows it, and that just didn't fucking happen. And I was asking her, I was like, why is this, like, what is happening here? And she's like, we as highly starseed beings, we actually choose partners to ground us here on this earthly realm. A lot of the time we choose really stable partners, people who are very connected to the earth energy, who are very solid, very grounded, to help us be here in this realm. And when I heard that, I was like, you know what, that makes so much sense. And that's not to say that my partner doesn't respect me, he doesn't value me. He just genuinely is like, girl, you do you, and I'll be over here, and I'll support you, and I'll love you. You do whatever you want. And that's okay with me, right? So I think you have to also set boundaries for yourself in terms of like who you want to surround yourself with and whether or not they respect your boundaries, right?
Oh my God, yes. It's like, because I feel this in my bones, and fuck. It's
Eyebrows
almost like,
could not be raised higher.
it's like we are put here and they are our anchor to stabilize us so that we can continue to do what we're doing, but also to anchor us and to keep us in check, to make sure that we're like not turning into fucking psychos. Because let me tell you, there are some people in the space that I know are incredibly tuned in, incredibly connected in, and are like direct descendants of like many, 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 many star constellations, and they've come down onto earth, and then they've found somebody exactly like them, and then they become and like so enthralled in like stuff that has no fucking correlation to this world, to this earth, that you just sit back and you're looking at these people and you're like, you're both fucking insane. Like nobody can relate to you in any way. Is everyone looking at and witnessing what I'm witnessing? And I think that's why that we, and I know a lot of people have spoken to a lot of people in this community, and they're like, oh, I feel like my partner doesn't understand me. He doesn't understand what I'm doing. Like, he's just so not woo-woo. And I'm like, good, that's amazing, because not only are you giving him the opportunity to learn more about that and expand his self, but he's also giving you so much, and he's grounding you and anchoring you into, the 3D world and allowing you to sort of stay very, very grounded in this space. Because I'm telling you now, if I had somebody that was like me, it
would drive me crazy.
It would drive me insane. Like I would feel so out of control. I would feel like my nervous system would be through the fucking roof. Let me tell you. So I'm so grateful in a way. God, it's such a headache at times not being understood or feeling like they don't really get it. But it is such a gift to be with somebody who is your divine counterpart, because I mean, what happens when you put the two of the same sides of the batteries together? They just fucking repel. It's like, so we need that. Yeah, we kind of need that positive, negative magnetism happening within that dynamic for it to be that beautiful, dualistic, polarized experience here on Earth. And I like obviously don't want to break any relationships up, but I hope that everyone gets a chance to immerse themselves in that sort of dynamic, because there's so much room for learning on both sides for the person. And I feel like it's a bit of a waste in a way when two people are just the exact same and they're into the exact same things, come together and decide to spend their lives together. I think that sometimes that can be a little bit of a wasted opportunity for growth. And I'm not saying that to dismiss everyone who is totally the same as their partner, but I'm just saying there's a potential of that happening if you're not careful and you don't keep each other in check. So there's a silver lining on that. Absolutely. I agree.
There is. And you know what? For people who are in that position, they're like, my partner doesn't really understand me. I'm like, well, I don't really understand my partner either. I'm like, I don't know why the fuck you're doing half the shit you're doing, but you know what? I love you and you do you, boo. So anyway, I think it's a good point to wrap up on. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know. If you are in a relationship with somebody who does not get you, just know that that's okay. Like, there are other ways to love and appreciate one another, and just know that your cell family is out there. We're waiting for you. Come and find us, and just know that we're always here if you need to chat. We're excited to see all of you step into your most authentic self and express yourself on this deeper level and find a way to communicate the amazing, magical things that you're doing in your everyday life. And we hope and we pray that this episode has given you some sort of support to continue that opening of the throat chakra and that calmness in the nervous system to truly step into what you are here to do. We love you. We appreciate you. If there's anybody who you think would benefit from this episode, please share it. We're on all the platforms, and we'll catch you next week. Bye, guys.